Kia ora and welcome back. This is chapter 7 of the book Learning, the Future of Learning. And in this chapter here, we're looking at our inner voice. One of the things that we tend to assume is that young people know they talk to themselves. And you'll be surprised to find that in fact most young people don't know they talk to themselves. And one of the first things we want them to be conscious of is the fact they talk to self. Because talking to self is our definition of thinking. Because in talking to self, we rearrange things in our head. We question ourselves. We interrogate what we think we understand. Am I reading this book? Do I need to sense this book to read this book, or not? You ask yourself questions, and then you interrogate that, and you want to try and understand your world. So, in order to think, we sometimes use language in the traditional sense, and we actually do talk to ourselves. Smart people, generally speaking, talk to themselves out aloud. And the reason for this is that if you talk to yourself on the way to work in the morning in the car, but don't make any sound or don't feel anything, then you won't remember that conversation you had. Because what the brain requires in order to map a memory is it needs some sensory data. And we map memories to sensory data. So if there's no sensory data, you don't actually remember the event. Right? Which is why you don't remember driving through roundabouts sometimes. Right? Because in fact you're not consciously mapping data. You're talking to the person next to you. So you remember that conversation, but you won't remember actually going through the roundabout or putting the handbrake on. Okay? So in this case here, what we want to encourage teachers to do is to explicitly make it clear to young people that talking to self is thinking, and they need to talk to themselves a lot. And if they can, talk to themselves out aloud. So if you talk to yourself out aloud and thought that was quite weird, no, that's a sign of intelligence, and talking to yourself is not the first sign of madness. Okay? So we use our imagination to talk to self, because what we end up doing is actually combining sensory data, okay, to actually make a 3D virtual landscape in our heads around what we're thinking about. And in particular, that's about emotion as much as anything else. So when we talk about senses, we're starting to link emotions into the sensory bucket. So we've got 23 senses, plus we've got this other thing called emotions. And they seem to be sitting in that same sort of bucket at the moment. So imagination is defined as the way in which our brain can create our mind. That's what it does. Okay? And we talked about it in the last chapter. So in this chapter we're talking about how do we develop inner voice. So have a read of the chapter, and then we'll get back with chapter 8. And so thank you very much, and enjoy the reading.